Welcome. I'm extending my welcome to you. We're continuing our series called Scent, looking at salt and light. I have here some salt, nice cooking salt there, and I have some a light here. Now, obviously in the New Testament era, they didn't have torches and things, but they had things like this. Flames. This is the kind of light that we're referring to, not bright sort of head torches or something. So salt and light is the subject of what I'm speaking about today and what that means. Now, yesterday was lovely and sunny, wasn't it? Didn't you enjoy the bright sunshine? And it just gives you so much energy, doesn't it? Well, I decided in the afternoon to go for a run. And beautiful sunny day, I got my phone and my headphones and I put my music on. And just before I went out, Helen said to me, don't get annoyed with anyone. And what she meant was, it was going to be really busy on the paths because I was going to run down by the Thames. And she was just warning me in advance that, Matt, don't be your moody self. Don't be your kind of, everyone's in my way. Why don't people just walk on the left like they should do? Which is the kind of thoughts I have internally. She warned me. Come on, Matt. Let me encourage you. Don't get annoyed with people. So I went out running and I had a change of attitude. And my attitude was one of being like it says in the Bible, being a peacemaker and patience. And I even smiled at people. You know those people with the leads that allow their dogs to go out on a long way, meaning no one can get past the path. Even those people, I was smiling towards them. We're kind of smiling anyway, getting over myself, remembering Helen's words ringing in my ear. What Helen was doing in that moment was she was being salt and light to me. She was encouraging me to do well, to do better. And she inspired me. She changed my attitude. And then in turn, I became a bit like salt and light, in that I was pleasant to people, more pleasant to people. I was more thoughtful to people. I was more patient with people. So I became salt and light. So being salt and light is not always massive things. It's often the very small details of life, of encouraging each other, setting a great example, of challenging one another in love. That's often what salt and light is about. It's often the very small things. Of course, there are big things we can do, but we've got to deal with the small things, haven't we? And then we're more likely to deal with the big things. So we can often not be salt and light and miss the opportunities that God gives us to encourage people, to bring his goodness, to challenge people. And we can all feel that. We miss that opportunity to challenge things, maybe at work. Maybe there was a conversation. Maybe there was gossip. Maybe there was a situation where you felt, you know what, this is unkind. This is unpleasant. This is creating a bad atmosphere. This is unhealthy. I should say something, and maybe you stood off. And sometimes that's wise. But if, as we heard earlier, as from Elaine, if the Holy Spirit is moving you, if you feel in your conscience, you know, I should say something. But we don't always take the opportunity, do we? And we miss it. If only I'd intervened and said something, maybe their marriage would be healthier. If I'd been more salt and light at home, if I'd been a better example, if I'd spoken better, perhaps my relationship with my grown-up children would now be better. If only I'd intervened, if only I'd said something, situations would be different. You know, we can all miss it. We can all fail to be salt and light, and we can be tasteless and dim. Not salty, not light like we should be. Now we read in Matthew 5, Jesus is talking about being salt and light. Let's turn in our Bibles. If you've got a Bible, it might be helpful to open one like I've got here. It might be good to open one in front of you because I'm going to be referring to a few things very briefly because we've only got about another 14 or so minutes. So Matthew 5, 13 to 16. You notice this is coming straight after the Beatitudes. In this Sent series, which is talking about being disciples and making disciples, as disciples, we're meant to learn from Jesus. And this Sermon on the Mount, which begins in chapter 5 with the Beatitudes, ends at the end of chapter 7 with the wise and foolish builders who build on Jesus' teaching, it says. You see, being disciples means applying things like this. So we've done the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes speaks of our character. And now Jesus talks about being salt and light, which is talking about our role in the world. Our role in the world. To be those who are examples. To be those who bring loving challenge. And of course to share the gospel as well. So let's read Matthew 5, 13 to 16. You are the salt of the earth. Just where you are right now, say, I am the salt of the earth. But if salt loses saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. You are the light of the world. Say, I am the light of the world. Say it again, I am the light of the world. You are it, guys. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand. Now I have here a little stand. There we are. I'm going to raise up the light now. I'm going to put it on a stand. There we are. We put it on a stand. And it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. So in summary, what we're saying, it says here right at the bottom, doesn't it? Good deeds. Our example, the way we live. If we will live out the Beatitudes, if we put those on, if we will live out what it talks about in the Sermon on the Mount, if we model these things, particularly this is talking about our lifestyle, isn't it? Our good works, the way we live, then people will praise our Father in heaven, which principally means that people will come to God, be saved through Jesus. But too often, I fail to be salt and light. So often, you fail to be salt and light. So often, the church in the nation fails to be salt and light. We're not tasty like salt. We're not light and bright, but we're almost camouflaged within the culture, rather than being a counterculture in the way we're in our marriages, in our purity, in our forgiving, in our righteousness is the word, isn't it? In the way we live. So Jesus says these things, you are the salt of the earth. And my point today is you are it. Don't miss it. You see, he doesn't say take salt and pour it on to things. He doesn't say get light and take it into situations. He says you are it. You are the salt. You are the light. You are it. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. This is my point. You are it. This is Jesus' point. You are it. Don't miss it. You are the salt of the earth. There are lots of good things that are done by people, aren't there? Amazing things, and that's great. But only you, Christians, disciples, the church, is this salt and light that Jesus is talking about. In this world, it says, you are the light of the world, you see. This world is dark, and it needs to see an example in us of light, of people who know Jesus, of people who have, this world has no true hope, not eternal hope. They need to see in us hope, a living hope, a deep faith, a trust in trying circumstances. We need to set an example in the places that God has put us. You see, salt in the first century, or in this era when Jesus is speaking here, was used for there was no refrigerators, no freezers. It was used for preserving food, meat in particular. It was also used, like it is today, as a condiment to add flavour, and it was also used and put into some sacrifices that were offered to God. So salt is about being an example, living for Jesus in this world, being an example, and that's particularly it. We need to be a light, be salty where we are, in our families, in our workplaces, in our neighbourhoods, in the church, wherever we are. We need to be it. You are it. Don't miss it. We stop decay. We need to bring loving challenge where necessary, as I mentioned earlier. And we also bring the gospel. This is what it all means to be salt. Example comes to mind when I was at university studying to be a teacher. One of my there was a group of us who would hang around together, and one of them was a more mature student, and he was married with children, and he started having an affair with another student. And I felt very uncomfortable, obviously, about this, and I challenged him on this, and it didn't go down well at all. I don't know how it ended or anything like that, because we came to the end of our course. But I needed to be salt. If we're going to be salt, and as I'm going to talk about in a bit, light, we need to remember the last beatitude that Jem spoke about a couple of weeks ago, which was about, or last week rather, persecution. You see, if we're not prepared to be insulted for Jesus, for righteousness' sake, then we're never going to be salt or light. If we are more interested in being admired by everyone, if we take peacemaking too far, as if you remember, so that we're not prepared to be persecuted, then we will never be salt. Are you prepared to be salt? Are you prepared to be light? You are the light of the world. It says, but if salt loses its saltiness, becomes tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out, trampled underfoot. There's lots that could be said, but salt loses its saltiness. Salt can't actually lose its saltiness. It's a compound that cannot be, but it can, in natural circumstances, it can become diluted through pollutants. That's what can happen. And if we allow our relationship with God to become polluted, to become distracted, if we're so busy or lazy to spend time with Him, to have a living, vibrant relationship with God, if we're so immersed in the culture that we're becoming impure, just like everybody around us, then we won't be salt. May God lead us into purity. We've got to live out that beatitude. Blessed are the pure in heart. And he goes on, you are the light of the world. And this is a repeat, really. This second metaphor is a repeat of the first one. Just using a different example. Why does Jesus repeat himself? Well, a good teacher repeats him or herself because we want people to remember what's being said. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Don't miss it, he's saying. You are it. Neither do people light a lamp, put it under a bowl. Instead they put it in its stand so it gives light to everyone in the house. Again, this is a second warning. You don't put it under a bowl. See, we can lose our saltiness he talked about, but you can also dim your light. A second warning. Let's not miss this. We can miss this. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Your good deeds are you living out your Christian faith. Your good deeds are you putting into practice the Beatitudes. Your good deeds are your putting into practice all that's mentioned in this Sermon on the Mount. So, for example, if we moved on, the next section, carrying on in chapter 5, he talks about murder. You've heard it said, don't murder. I tell you, don't be angry and outraged. You see, imagine if just think about this world that's full of hatred, isn't it? Full of anger. We will be salt and light if we are peacemakers, love peace rather than being outraged and bitter. You will be salt and light. It talks about adultery here, or rather being pure, seeking to be pure, not coveting another man's wife. It talks about in the commandments, doesn't it? Imagine we are the salt of the world if we love sexual purity. We set an example of that. The things we watch, the way we live, the way we speak, you'll be salt and light. Divorce, it talks about here. We're to love marriages. We're to work on our marriages. We are salt and light if we set an example of healthy marriage. And it goes on oaths. We are salt and light if we keep our word. If our yes is yes and our no is no. You see, we are salt and light as we live in the light of Jesus' teaching. So you and me, how are we going to respond to this? I think it's obvious, isn't it? We need to pray. We need to pray, Lord Jesus, make me, I am, thank you, you have made me the salt and light of the world. Thank you. Help me to be this today in the places that you have put me. You know, a firefighter knows their role. When the call comes in, when the bell goes, they don't hang around and make excuses. They are it. If they don't go, no one else will. They're it. You know, you are it. Don't miss it. You are the salt of the world. You are the light of the world where God has put you. Where God has put you. God has strategically positioned you in the relationships you have to be salt and light for him. Just imagine what would happen if we personally grasped this, said, yes, I'm it. I'm not going to miss it. Just imagine the effect of you're bringing salt and light into your family, into your neighbourhood, to your flat share, to your university, to your school, Imagine if you will stand for Jesus. Be an example, bring loving challenge, bring the gospel, being led by him. Imagine what that would do. Imagine if we as a church said, we are it. We're going to be the salt and light. Imagine if the church in the nation was to say, yes, we're it. We're the salt. We're the light. It would transform society. It would massively affect everything. In fact, we don't even need to guess what would happen, because Jesus tells us, if we are salt and light, if we don't miss this, if we say, yes, we're it, we're not going to miss it, Jesus promises this: they will see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So this is a very simple idea. You're the salt, you're the light. It's a very simple idea. As you go into this week, I want you to own this. Let's own this identity. Let's put on, like that firefighter putting on their fire retardant clothing. Let's put on this identity, and let's put on these beatitudes. Let's be prepared to be used by God, to be an example, to bring his righteousness, to bring his gospel into the places God has put us. But I particularly want to talk to every one of you. I feel the Holy Spirit wants me to remind you of this simple thing. It begins with right where you are. Don't worry about that over there, that over there. Of course, you can pray for those things, but it begins, we're not authentic, and we don't have integrity if we don't start where we are in your household, right in the relationships that you have. Being salt and light with your children, being salt and light with your husband and wife, being salt and light with your family, being salt and light with those you live with in your house share, with your lodgers or whatever. If you're on your own, being salt and light with those who are close to you. Starts right there. So you are it. Don't miss it. You are the salt and light of the world. I'm going to end there, and I'm going to hand back to Phil, and we're going to worship together.